Hello there and a warm welcome to this edition of the Citizens Chat Show here on Civic Space TV, our very first edition this year, 2025. Always a pleasure to have you join us. My name is Judith Atim. Today, we are looking at projections for 2025, the year of campaigns. It's certainly going to be a busy year, especially in the political front, as Uganda gears up for the 2026 general elections. And I'm pleased to have my esteemed panelists here with me. Right from my immediate left is Dr. Sarah Bireete, the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance, who has been missing from this show for quite a long time. Good to have you back, Sarah.
Yeah, but it's not such a long time. I'm glad to be back, and good afternoon, viewers.
It feels like ages not having you here. 4 weeks, roughly, but we are very happy to have you back. Next to Dr. Sarah is...
I think Awich missed a bit of the chaos.
He has not been here.
So next to Dr. Sarah, of course, is Dr. Robert Ojiambo, who is the head of the History Department at Chambogo University. Good afternoon, Dr. Ojiambo, and good to have you again.
Yeah, happy New Year, and glad to have a full house. Yeah, we last had this whole panel before we went for the constitutional conference
yeah, that was in November.
at Sheraton.
Yeah.
And Sarah, you have not been around. It was such a fantastic thing, because I even had a long discussion with the Major, asking him, why doesn't government give the public this opportunity to talk about things which matter to them, like these constitutional things and others. And he told me that the good thing, one of the guests is the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, but I did not get time to have a one-to-one with him. But that was a nice thing. And at the same time, Awich also after that time disappeared. But it's good they have all come together on the same day. I hope there is no conspiracy.
Thank you, Dr. Ojiambo. Also, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Joseph Ochieno, political commentator and UPC ideologue. Joseph, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Judith. It's a pleasure being here, starting the new year, full house. I noticed that I usually sit next to Sarah, but I hope it will not be the new norm for 2025, that the distance is different. And particularly because I thought I would be breaking this Bireete arrangement, but that said, talk about NRA guys, man. There's no way in which the government would like to do that, because it's not in their interest for Ugandans to know. But yes, I also fantastically enjoyed that conference. But that said, quickly, I just want to say that this year, amazingly, is my 20th anniversary. Returning to Uganda from exile after we had broken NRS back in the Constitutional Court for opening up political spaces for return to multipartyism. So I hope that this election year is a year that comes with hope, and that people in NRA know that this is not a gift from the bush or from anywhere else, but it's a basic right for our citizens.
Thank you, Joseph. And last but not least, of course, is retired Major Awich Pollar, who is the Director for External Relations at the NRM. Again, he's also been missing for an equal amount of time as Dr. Sarah, and we're very happy to have you back, Major.
Thank you so much. I think I miss you more than you missed me, but it was unavoidable. I was on a party work. We were digitalizing the party register to the extent that we want a perfect registry where President Museveni can pick a phone and call anybody from any part of the country who is NRM and talk to him. It will also help us to have primary elections, not like the other time when the party chairman said, whoever feels is NRM, go and line up. And also we shall have elections of structures which will crystallize into national conference which will give the flag to our flag bearer in 2026. So it was a very important experience. This year, of course, we expect so much. We want to see what has been the interventions in our party manifesto, the PDM. There are people who have grown rich. Would we expect more rich people, money in the pocket? But also, we shall have to do a lot of party primary activities that will keep us consumed. But again, I mean, we shall also see how Trump takes off. And since they up there in the global affairs, maybe it will really have impact on us. So we're really expectant for this year.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Quite a lot to look forward to in this year. So last week, Dr. Sarah and Major, you weren't around. We had a conversation where we're pretty much reflecting on the past year. And of course, a number of things that came up. I'm glad Major is also mentioning PDM. It's also one of the things that was assessed last year based on the performance and so on. We talked about RAPEX, we talked about wealth creation, the Chitezi garbage disaster, the developments in the banking sector, including the loss of 60 billion shillings from the Bank of Uganda, from the central bank, the recovery of fake money in another bank, and so many other fraudulent events that happened within the banking sector. We also looked at the protests that characterized the year, especially the anti-corruption protests and the arrest of young Ugandans who were actually protesting this vice. 25 years of the East African community. So pretty much we touched a lot of things. We also looked at events outside Uganda, including the election of Donald Trump and what this means for African Uganda, and developments in Syria, the ousting of Assad, and the lessons for democracy. There's so much expectation, of course, for 2025, and I just want your quick thoughts, Sarah. You've been away, moving around the continent, also gaining more lessons for us to compare when it comes to governance and democracy and so on. What do you foresee 2025 presenting for us as a country in the political, social, economic fronts?
Yeah, maybe if we could start with the political so that we handle each area on its own. So on the political front, 2025 will be Uganda's major electioneering year. You know that voting is early January 2026, so the nominations, campaigns, and everything will happen next year. So it's our major election year, and it comes in a context that has been graded as repressed. The Civic organization, which is based in Johannesburg and which monitors civic space across the world under its Civicus monitor, has graded Uganda as a closed or a repressed space. We are in the number 2 category, scoring 20 up to 49. The number 1 category is 0 to 20, and those are closed spaces. Closed civic spaces means that political parties have no freedoms to organize. Civil society has no freedom to do its work. The citizens' agency is not functional in terms of checks and balances and holding leaders accountable, and the institutions of government are not serving their intended purposes, which should be to uphold the fundamental rights and freedoms of the people and make sure that governance is done in the interest of the majority citizens. So Uganda is one touch away from a closed space, scoring 20 to 49% in the Civicus Global Monitor. And in our context, this is where you find, for example, the political opposition parties are under siege, constant siege by the regime, the ruling party that is fused with the state pillars and institutions, and NRM functions through state pillars. I know that our panelist, Awich, represents the party, but the NRM party runs UPDF as its military wing, or the chairman of NRM, runs UPDF as its military wing as compared to a national army. They run state institutions as just an extension of the party, and there is no separation between the state, the pillars of the state, and the party and its functioning and ruling, ruling as a ruling party. So this state capture does not give the citizens' agency space to operate. The opposition, one of the big opposition leaders has had Christmas, in jail, and is facing martial law or military law, because I don't see the difference. All people, you know, who have dissenting views in this country are faced or are tried under martial law as compared to civilian courts. The president in Singapore has just been impeached for imposing martial law, but we have indirect imposition of martial law in this country.
South Korea.
South Korea, sorry, South Korea. We have martial law operation on people holding dissenting views politically, including NUP, the FDC, or the new party of Katonga faction with Kizza Besigye having been abducted from Nairobi and now in court-martial. The controversial statement of the president preferring military justice over normal judicial dispensation of justice as enshrined in our constitution. The ruling of the Supreme Court saying there is no mechanism for redress from military courts, that should be administrative. So all those are indicators of a constrained civic space. And to make matters worse, we have a crisis in the judiciary. We are coming from a backdrop of a crisis in the judiciary with a major cadre judge, Justice Musa Sekana, that replaced Justice Kavuma. You know, Justice Kavuma previously was famous for even issuing orders 8 p.m., midnight, banning, you know, freedom of expression in the country. So when he retired, he was replaced with a formerly brilliant Musa Sekana, who will now go down in history as a regime draconian judge that could not offer liberties or redress to the people that appeared before him, which is very unfortunate. Law students, my generation and below, have grown up reading writings of Musa Sekana, who is now a judge, as an authority on civil law. So the aspirations of a student lawyer out there, after reading all the knowledge that is in the books on civil law written or authored by Justice Musa Sekana, now Justice of High Court. When he authored them, he was a lecturer and a free legal practitioner. They would get confused as to what is the meaning of justice in this country. His latest action trying to muzzle the freedom of self-determination in the law society, very unfortunate. His conduct on lawyers that appear before him on cases regarding civic space in this country. We have appeared before him twice through our legal representation. The way he presides over those cases, you know that on day one, you have lost the case, so there is no justice for you in that court. And even when you ask him to recuse himself because his conflict is apparent, he does not. And the most laughable, you know, part of his record now will be when he was posted in Imbarara as a resident, senior resident judge, and recalled, this is early 2020, 2021, and recalled immediately and given a temporary posh office at Serena because he had no space to sit in at High Court because he had been posted in another jurisdiction. And one wonders, so is it the judiciary that rented that office at Serena? Why recall a judge after posting in less than a month? But he was recalled because he was supposed to preside over sensitive cases of government, including the appointment of Justice Byabakama in 2 institutions of government, the Electoral Commission, while he is still serving as a justice in the Court of Appeal of Uganda. And the recent court decision ruled that that's unconstitutional. People cannot hold 2 positions in one government. But we have 2 key people, the DPP and the chair of the Electoral Commission, holding 2 positions in one government, which is crazy. Yeah, so the civic space is constrained to this extent. When you look at the NGOs, as I try to conclude, just to demonstrate the context through which elections will be held. Most of the governance NGOs were either closed or have no funding. And that's why you see little or limited engagement on critical governance issues in the country. Most of them collapsed on the weight of closure of DGF in the previous elections, and I'm sure the regime will be celebrating that massacre of NGOs in Uganda. Then, of course, the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act also saw the exit of most of the funding partners that believe in liberal freedoms. And that really choked the governance, rights, freedoms, elections, NGOs in this country, and have been limited or no engagement. That's why we have no visible civic education as we go into nominations. And nobody sees any civic education going on or voter education because of that siege on NGOs. And then when it comes to enjoyment of freedom of rights, if we can draw from the protests against Parliament, then you know that even that space is constrained. I submit.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Ojiambo.
Yeah, this year is going to be same story with some deteriorations here and there, but it's going to be the same old thing. Because in Africa, unfortunately, governments come in military uniform and pretend to be civil, and Major Awich will tell you that how can you call our government a dictatorship when there are elections? And I would say that even in North Korea, they hold elections where they normally put one candidate and who everybody should vote, and they vote and at the end of the day. So in Africa, in most cases, elections are not for change of leadership. They are just to cleanse, to sanitize dictatorship. And so that's why Sarah is saying he doesn't see anything civil, a lot of civic education and what have you. That would be if you are promoting democracy. But in Uganda and many of African countries, the incumbent even hopes that people do not know anything. And that's why when you go to most of our rural areas, people wonder, you are going for election. What has happened to Museveni? Museveni abayirichi. Yabachi.
Because of lack of civic education.
Why are you want to elect? What has happened to the president? They think he's a proclaimed leader of this country until when he will die. It doesn't only happen in Uganda, it happens in Kenya, it happens in this Congo and these other places. You remember there is a country where there was election the other year, and the candidate who was contesting with that president, he was the one to congratulate him before even they released the elections, because he knew he was going to win. He was going to win, and indeed he won by 98% in our neighborhood here. So that is, in fact, in my view, if there was a way, they would remove these elections. If there was a way, we would do campaign and they remove them, so that we just wait for fate to do its part, because most leaders are determined to rule until when they die. So we give them that chance. Those billions of shillings that are going to be wasted by the Electoral Commission, by the parties, by the candidates, would be used maybe to repair our roads, so that we get off these potholes, and we say the dictator is fine. Because, by the way, you can have good dictators, good benevolent dictators who are better than these masqueraders in Africa. So that is one of the things. But two, the civic space does not only limit ourselves to elections. I am worried that at least people had hope that when things are too hard, maybe an man has harassed you or there are problems, you would run to court. Now the legal or the judiciary has just collapsed. And why you don't even see people, the other year I was asking For example, why don't people go and challenge the things of the court martial and others to the constitutional court? But they know they are wasting their time.
The Constitutional Court has ruled twice.
They are wasting their time. The Constitutional Court, yeah, well, Sarah, we have said that. The Constitutional Court ruled and ruled and ruled. So what else do you want to do? The Supreme Court is the one obstructing justice. Because Sarah's normally tell us that justice delayed is justice denied. Now, 4 years, somebody has appealed there, and there's nothing taking place. We are just depending on the orders given by the Supreme, the Chief Justice, not even court, but the Chief Justice just said, let this thing first stay. So it is going to be very hard for people. Still politically, the political parties would be another place where to go. But even the political parties, yes, they are trying. They are like a man who is tied kandoya. You know, one thing that NRA introduced here was some torture called kandoya. They would tie you tie your hands and push them behind, and you look like a trapped bird. So political parties are in that situation. Yes, they are there, but they are tied. Everything they try to do as their activity is termed as is almost treasonous to do party work. Of course, last year, NOP was allowed to move around, but I thought that was also just sanitizing to say that they can do some work, and so on and so forth. So, even the political parties, you find they have a lot of problems. But the other problem, they also have their internal weaknesses. And the internal weaknesses have been caused by the environment that they live in. I don't think you can grow up in a quarrelsome family and you become very humble children, you raise good children. NRM itself, it has no activity until elections. You have just heard my good friend has told you that they have now been registering and digitizing. As if NRM has come from the US and it has come back. Why does it wait almost 1 year to election to register? What happened with those other years? So all the parties are going to wake up, and when they wake up because of election, they are like headless chicken. They will start moving all over the place and they cause a lot of commotion. Then they give police chance to shoot people. We just hope this time police does not come out to shoot people like it did in the last elections. Remember, people are going to disappear. I don't know whether they are still using that method. I don't know whether Major Awich will tell us whether they still have
abductions.
Abduction.
They are now advanced cross border. Didn't they abduct basically?
In fact, there are rumors that in this year, there may be even now assassinations.
Oh, God.
Assassinations. I hope these things people are writing are not true. But we really hope that they don't repeat abduction of people, innocent people. Remember the 19 NOP supporters up today, we don't know where they are. So we just hope that, and you know, it scares mothers. In fact, many mothers are now worried that election is going to begin again so that their children disappear. And the beauty, those days it used to be only their children, but this time even the mothers themselves were abducted. So we hope that that will not happen. Still politically, internationally, we have some challenges. Of course, the abduction of Besigye in Nairobi did not go well in our international or diplomatic stories. We just hope that this will calm down. We have all along been talking about the Somalia issue. When our soldiers leaving that place, there had been a process where they had started coming back. It looks like they are not going to come back. The comments made by some leaders in NRM, including the president, about other countries. For example, the other day I heard him talk about Khartoum and how he advised them and they did not listen to his advice. I thought that that was not necessary for a country that has a lot of problems. Khartoum now is almost a fallen state. It needs more support. I don't see the OAU. The OAU has been the AU has been silent. There is a lot of crisis in our midst. There were coups in Central African Republic and West Africa, and the AU was almost silent. They have kept silent. In fact, they are wishing these coup leaders. It was only ECOWAS which did something, but even that was not enough. So we hope that that does not continue, because if Africa is not stable, countries like Uganda are very good at copying bad things. They are good at copying bad things, so we hope it will not happen.
Thank you. Joseph, let me hear from you. But as I hear from you, I want to reflect on something. Dr. Sarah talked about the Constitutional Court making ruling twice. When the Supreme Court made its verdict last week, a couple of weeks ago, recently, and the president issued that statement justifying the prosecution of civilians in the military court, there was also a contradiction somewhere in his statement, basically saying if anyone is dissatisfied with the ruling of the court-martial, then the civilian courts would still be superior.
If I may say something briefly before Joseph comes in. You know, from a legal and constitutional point of view, the president has no business lecturing this country about laws, and it's no wonder that he contradicted himself in that letter. The duty to interpret laws under Article 137 belongs to the Constitutional Court, and or the apparent court of the Constitutional Court, which is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court pronounced itself on the duty of military courts, whose function is administrative for the disciplinary purposes of the army. The president issues a contradicting document saying you can appeal, and they were saying there is no apparent duty or function to civil courts except where one has been sentenced to death or life imprisonment. And that's a creature of the UPDF Act. So the president, tampering with an area which is not supposed to tamper with, because under the doctrine of separation of powers, which is entrenched in the basic structure of our constitution, the president as a head of executive and his organs under him are supposed to engage with service delivery and accountability, interface with the taxpayers' money and account to them. The legislature, on the other hand, this is under Article 99 for the executive functions. Under Article 79, the legislature is to make laws or any document with the force of law in this country. The judiciary, under Article 126, its duty is to deliver justice to the benefit, advantage of the people in accordance with their wishes and aspirations. So that separation of powers was not respected in the president's letter, and it's no wonder he's making blunders.
Thank you. Joseph, your thoughts?
You guys are starting in the new year with the assumption and presumptions that we are in the democracy. And, that
Yes, we are.
And that we have
We are not.
It's a
government which is a government of the law by the laws. Sarah, in fact, one of my closing remarks and emotive remarks of 2024 was a response to Mr. Museveni's letter. You know, Judith, you're very generous that you describe me as the optimist with a few other people who do so. I am genuinely a Ugandan optimist, and I'm indeed optimist and a UPC optimist, and I genuinely was telling some of the young people that I met earlier who were fantastically a part of the programs, thanks to Civic Space, that we must be optimistic about this country and this continent. But I was saddened that Mr. Museveni could, and so as part of my optimism, I have always been hoping that at some stage I will be persuaded by Comrade Awich's chairman to do something that might enable me to commend him and to thank him, to appreciate him, to recognize him and to respect him. But the guy just surprised me with that letter. In actually that messy letter of his, he insults the people of Karamoja, in which he says, as part of the justification of that look, not only does it work as part of his intervention in an area which is not his, not only does it work, but does actually work, and the best example is that it helped us deal with these streetwise bandit thugs and homeless, helpless, foodless Karamojo, and now we have to get them, whip them because they're cheeky thieves. They've been causing problems, but it worked because we got them, and 900 of them. Now, not only have we housed them, but we are feeding them. Can you imagine? We're feeding them here. So they must be grateful. But Mr. Museveni forgets that Karamoja, talking politics and service delivery, Sarah, is the place where Mr. Museveni first sent his wife as a czar to go and rescue. And I've actually argued, what did Janet leave in Karamoja and what did she bring back? If possibly not their gold.
Each time she made a visit there, she used more money than the budget for Karamoja.
You see? And then Janet leaves, comes and becomes Minister for Education, amongst the many other things. What a mess. We don't want to go there because it's still early part of the year. But most importantly, the Karamoja that Mr. Museveni talks about, and talk about thieves, that these are petty thieves who will get court-martialed. 22 of his ministers are actually organized thieves who stole from Karamoja, including his prime minister, his speaker, his government chief whip, including his minister of finance, thieves in his cabinet. They've not been court-martialed, but Karamoja innocent children have. And Dr. Ojiambo here is a social scientist lecturer. When we discuss poverty, and particularly when we're discussing things to do with crime, petty crimes, particularly petty crimes, they're usually related to poverty, unemployment, low level of education, social challenges, family challenges, and so everything else that would explain why these young Karamojong street people are. Amazingly, for the first time, and I'll say it on air, for the first time, I got impressed by the Catholic Archbishop of Kampala. I attended an event in Tinda, not far from your offices, Sarah, fantastic offices, at St. Charles Luanga's towards Christmas. They are celebrating a 10th anniversary. And by the way, when people come together and focus, they do great things. So the Archbishop was saying that, look, as part of them starting up a big church and a news center and all this big project with the billions, he said, look, here in this Tinda is amongst the many places where not only are people rich and we've done fantastic things and you guys really did a lot of work in the church, including tithe, but it's also here that, when you go through the traffic lights, you find street children and say, where are we Christians? What are we seeing? And we was talking about some of the things we've discussed on these programs. Politicians, leaders, policymakers do these things, and most of those children that the Archbishop was talking about are children from Karamoja. But anyway, briefly this year, I don't see much I can add from what my friends have said because of the starting point, except to say that I look back to 20 years, as I say. I came back 20 years ago, 2 months away. So in April, we'll be marking 20 years, but also 20 years since effectively the registration of UPC, following the return to multi-partyism. And so sometimes I wonder, what is it that we've achieved? I know Dr. Jambo's party talk about some of those things. And then I see, of course, that when Dr. Bote dies, then his wife becomes the president, then Olaro Tunu takes on, and then from Olaro Tunu we've been struggling internally. I really hope that this 2025 is the year when we're able to resolve internally our issues at UPC, but that all urgently, all political parties, this first half of this year, particular opposition political parties, sort out their messes of leadership. And so does NRM, including NRM, which must include Mr. Museveni's son, and then to confirm, is he the next candidate? If he's not the next candidate, what is he up to with his Twitter handles threatening America, threatening Kenya, and abusing and including Sudan, and actually including talk about Bobby Wine as being this Munyankole kind of guy. And the chief of defense forces not only talking politics and petty politics, but actually talking identity politics, which should really not be in conformity with this position and office. So I hope some of these things are resolved this other part of this year. But I worry, Sarah, I have a matter in court, judicial review matter, which is 4 years old. And some matter for leadership, leadership issue.
They should take it to the court martial.
And so
should fight to court
The court martial
I
to
think
hurry
I
it
should,
very
if I
fast.
refer it to court martial, it would have been you guys have given me brilliant idea. I need to review this. Yes, my matter is going to court martial. I was reviewing the other day as we do this court. Bambi, Judith, this sympathizes with me. Thank you.
I
No,
do.
in that matter, actually, March last year was the last time the principal judge wrote to me to tell me that he's referred the matter to the head of the civil division. Why do I bring it at this personal level? To emphasize the points that my colleagues have talked about. That I don't know where we can build on hope with some of these things. But then, generally, last year, Mr. Museveni, while making his trips around using our money in the name of monetary equity, he's campaigning. And last year, when he goes ahead and kidnaps Kizza Besigye from Nairobi, something I never knew would happen, again, for the shock that he gave us in 2021 with the killing of our people in young people during the elections, I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know that these guys would go back to Kizza Besigye and do all this kind of stuff with him. You know, they're subduing Kizza Besigye and putting warning sign and signal to people. And Dr. Ojiambo is hopeful that it doesn't get worse. We really hope that it doesn't get worse. And so I see the splits in NUP, the splits in FDC, the challenges in DP, and of course our own internal challenges in UPC, and the fact that in NRA now, I think it's sort of like a fait accompli. They're waiting for the father, the son, the mother, and relatives, close relatives, to sort out how best in their interest is done. And like Dr. Ojiambo is saying that we could as well go to court martial and hand over these other things, we could as well just close our eyes and then wait for was it white smoke to come from the trinity of Comrade Kagota family that the next person leading us post next year is so and so.
How I pray this time they don't take their thing to Nambole. Because it's already a known thing to spoil our stadium, which has been very expensively renovated.
No, they take it but Nambole
But
to
do they pay?
symbolically console.
Do they
They
pay?
don't.
Comrade which will say they pay.
Part of state cap Chankwanzi, Nambori. Do you pay their state organs?
I think Major will respond to that shortly.
Yeah, so
Yes.
Judith, I really don't want to take too much of your time because I'm sparing some more to have a conversation post Comrade Wish. No, political parties need to wake up this year, post this season. They need to wake up. Political parties need to work closer. Political parties need to urgently resolve their internal issues. Political parties need really to refocus on common agenda to be able to work together. But I think part of that agenda should actually be to put these guys under pressure. But as I said, one of the things that I was disappointed about last year was that people needed to have come closer and push them closer so that this Besigye thing, like an NRM friend of mine told me, was not a matter for Besigye, but it's a question where one puts the FDs, or rather NRM politicians, legislators on the spot. But number two, brings to question the commitment to the East African community. I've already told this program my views on it. But then three, most importantly, it says that, well, if Besigye could go to the court martial, it means all of us are candidates for going to the court martial.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Major, the mic is yours now.
Wow, so much has been said, and of course, many are erroneous. I just beg to put it clear to the viewers. Sarah talked something about first of all, I take note that this segment we are only talking about the political, the civil aspect, and I will zero myself to that. Now, in the process, Sarah talked about the civic space ranking from some South African
The World Civic
Organization. I don't know. I'm going to Joburg tonight. I wish I could visit them. But I don't know their ranking. They have a right to their ranking. But thanks God they have not ranked us in the top worst. We are there. That is good enough. But like I've seen in the ranking of human rights, for example, the National Human Rights Institutions, when UN ranks our Human Rights Commission to category A, some people don't seem comfortable with it, that we are in category A, which is the best category.
It was downgraded.
And also the democratic indicators recently, some other body ranked us very well. I think we're number 1 or 2 in Africa.
In terms of democracy. Democracy.
Which body is that?
You remember...
They must have ranked in descending order.
No. Sarah, you remember there was... the presentation was made in Hotel Africana.
No wonder.
And I was with our friend, the lawyer, who is sometimes a panelist, yeah?
No, Afrobarometer did not say you're the best.
They
They said more Ugandans still prefer democracy.
Judith, you can check Google the Afrobarometer ranking of democracies or something like that.
Let's accept we are number 1.
It was so good.
Descending order.
Google won't lie us. But so I'm saying, if this South African-based organization ranked us otherwise, we shall try to do better. But we are ranked very well in other areas, including happiness. Including happiness. I keep saying in East Africa we are the happiest.
No,
and you can't
that was later changed.
And you can't be happy
now
when
Tanzanians.
you can't be happy when you have nothing in your stomach. So that is about the ranking. The other thing is the merging of government agencies with NRM party. We really, as a party, don't feel we are so merged because it is true we are the conceiver of the manifesto, and we sell this manifesto, and they vote for us. Do you know that people in executive, in governments, if...
So Major, with just a quick one.
The Afrobarometer.
Ugandans rank high in commitment to democracy.
Yeah.
Yes.
But are far less satisfied with how democracy works in their country.
So we rank high.
In commitment, so that citizens are committed to democracy,
but
the space does
the
not
operative
allow.
word there is ranking high. That is the key words in the whole thing. Ranking high. So that is it.
Yeah, for
So
clarity, we rank high on demand for democracy.
Yes.
But low on supply.
Yeah.
No.
That's basically what it
That's why I
says.
like data. Data is good.
Yeah.
So therefore we rank high.
That's what it says.
And I was saying they claim that NRM merges with the government agencies is not true, because while as a party we conceive the manifesto, including PDM and all this, and health and education and all that, do you know that when the people vote for us, we are far from the people implementing the budget and the money. And sometimes it has reached to a point where when it succeeds, it is the government which has succeeded. When it fails, NRM party. So we are on the receiving end of the failure, and some people who did not even conceive an idea about the manifesto are on the receiving end of the success. So we even wonder, because people even see us like not as strong, because what we are put in the manifesto, some people are implementing and putting budget and budget and budget to it. So the claim of merging does not work. For example, we even, in Tanzania, for example, CCM, even digging a road, you can't make a road without a CCM chairman being in charge. Those who have been to Tanzania tell me. I'm not even going further to a communist party like a communist party like China. In CCM or even ANC, they are really in charge of things. For us, we just prepare the food and the eaters are somebody else. No, so that claim does not. You even think that, and yet we, the party, are the ones who win election and form government. But don't you clearly see that the government people with the flashy cars are stronger than the party?
What is the difference?
So how do you, because the party structures are known, party leaders and secretariat and all that, Because are you saying Mao, who is driving a Land Cruiser, is in the party?
He's NRM.
No.
Why do you
So we even feel sometimes demoralized.
So why does the army campaign for you by bidding
The army
opposition?
doesn't. The army doesn't. So I think I've illustrated the claim of Maja.
Was campaigning in the last election.
Now,
in Masaka,
yes.
house to house, even threatening to kill people in the open, and you never disciplined him. Brigadier Sand.
When
He's
my
still
colleagues
serving.
were talking, I was taking notes. And when I'm talking, they are
I'm
quarreling.
sorry.
It's because
Okay,
it's a hard question.
Let's give
Mine, I
Major-
was taking notes.
It's okay.
So, the matter of Judge Sekana, is an independent body, but I believe that in the procedures that if you're aggrieved with what a judge has done, you appeal. You have no business even quarreling and
And then when
abusing
you appeal,
him.
you take 5 years.
You appeal against what he has said.
Please give Major time.
There is also an element where Professor seems to have resigned about African democracies. Professor, not all is lost. We are very, you see, first of all, the conceiving of the idea of democracy, you're seeing it from the lenses of the Western democracy. Some of us even believe, and that's why we put in the Constitution, a movement system of government. Now, from the disagreement of the system of democracy itself, but to the practicalities, we have had countries like Tanzania where a president dies and the lady vice president takes over. Our Western friends will not highlight that. They would have rather highlighted if Tanzania had collapsed.
But
we
the
have
parties
Ghana.
have been banned
We
in
have Ghana
Tanzania.
where the presidents win. I mean, a president loses and concedes. We have countries in SADC countries, many countries which have had. So I don't believe that we should really be so negative about continental democracy. We have moved mileage and we are moving very many miles again. Is it true that NRM doesn't have activity? We always have quarterly activity. I think I've missed a program here when I was in the north. The other time when later there was the district, Kwania, and our other colleagues had gone to Busoga. So we have our activity. It is not true that we don't have activity, we wait for election. No, we have quarterly and we cover the whole country. The thing that I really want to clear here is the president's interpretation of what you call the interpretation and what appears like a contradiction. First of all, it is not true that the president should not talk about the law. The president is the fountain of honor, is the chief executive of this country. Laws are, majority of laws are proposed by the executive. How are you going to propose a law by this and this minister if yourself don't comprehend it? A society is supposed to be arbitrated by the state. And this state, the embodiment of the state is the president. So the laws that government come up is to cure mischief. So how will mischiefs in society be cured if the president cannot know what is happening? Laws are a logic. The putting into sections and articles are a later stage. You must know the logic. What is the mischief in society? And how are we going to cure this mischief? Then you throw it to the technocrats like what you call the first parliamentary council, the drafts person. But before the draft person puts into drafting, who conceives that logic that you are betraying society, that you are putting a society, because a state is to hang up on top of us. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in this room. For the peace and harmony in this room, there must be a law put by the state. And who is the embodiment of the state? The president. So it's the one who picks the logic. Then the draftsman and the what just simply puts it in phrases. Now the apparent contradiction that we're talking about is to the effect that is it possible for an appeal of death and life imprisonment from a court martial appealable? Now, we had known, like the president had said, many appeals had been coming. There are 3 appeal cases handled by Supreme Court peacefully. The case of Lieutenant Ogwang that they deviated from was to the ground that there had been an amendment, and they cited that amendment. But the point here is that what the appeals that have been going through was not coming from an act of parliament like Sarah said. It was from a regulation that was passed by Amam Baba, the Minister of Defense. Because the law says once you pass an act of parliament, the minister passes a regulation to smoothen it. Like Children's Act, the Minister for Children is supposed to come up with children regulation something. So now, this regulation to UPDF Act, when Amama was the minister, he put the regulation which the court said amounted to passing a law, because in that regulation Amama said from the court martial appeal you can appeal to ordinary court. So the judges were saying, who gave the minister power to put a regulation which is like a law? That was the contention. But as opposed to contradiction, Supreme Court has handled 3 appeal cases and disposed it off. And all of a sudden they have woken up with this one. Why they have woken up with? They said there was a law which was amended, which now does not make them go through. So there is no inconsistency in the president's writing of the law. But the important thing here is the president, which is the embodiment of the state, should be the first person to see the logic of a mischief and how to address a mischief. For example, computer has come up. WhatsApp is there. Every development comes up with a mischief. Even industrialization. When we industrialize, you cause pollution. So when you bring computers, you are faced with the mischief of misusing it. Therefore, the state comes up with the law. That is the logic. Now, once the executive have come up with a logic, then the drafts lady or the drafts man is called the first parliamentary council. That's the ordinary thing. But that law must meet the logic. And that's what the president is saying.
So is he interpreting the logic?
He was saying the logic. He talked about the logic. The beef, the flesh, is what you are now talking of, section this, section this, section that. The logic, for example, here is what mischief does military court cure? He is saying in his logic that if somebody owns military hardwares, then such a person who is killing people with guns, he has brought himself to the armpit of the military law. Therefore, such a person who borders terrorist should be dealt with the other law. That is the logic. How now you put it into sections and chapters and verses, if you want, like a Bible, is the work of the drafts person. But the logic is conceived.
Just grant me one quick question, Afande. Did Jamil Mukulu or Thomas Koero kill Ugandans with guns, bombs, and other equipment resembling that of the military? And why are they in civilian courts?
Well, there are many laws that which is what you know very well called law applicable. Now, the prerogative of the DPP is constitutionally granted. Not only does he choose which forum to go, but even choose which law applicable. So if the DPP chosen the forum of the International Crimes Division, like in the case of Ochieno, because somebody would have seen that his crimes transcend across the boundaries, then that is a mandate of the DPP. But if the army, the arresting officer, finds you with the military stores, then the army chooses that. So it is a domain of the DPP.
The DPP chooses people who go under military?
No. I'm saying when you are arrested by the military. Now, Ochieno was arrested by police and therefore handed over to police, and it proceeded through the DPP. And DPP had that.
I thought Ochieno was...
no, he had already come out. Ochieno was arrested from a patch. Was arrested from a patch.
By the army?
No, by police.
Bireete, if you don't
We can get the detail. Yes.
If you don't mind just granting me this. So in which case then on the basis of that, the DPP has got those discretion. So who gave the discretion of the determination that Kizza Besigye should be tried in a military kangaroo court?
I think he was arrested by the military.
Who arrested the 36 FDC supporters who were also abducted from Kenya? Wasn't it the military? And why are they charged in civilian courts?
That is the domain of DPP. the DPP has the constitutional power to choose the law to prefer a judge and the forum for which court it chooses. So that is her business. Now, I think I've addressed the issue of the presidency. Now, the imprisonment of Karamojong warriors, is it a simple thing? The Karamojong warriors was there was total insecurity in Karamoja. Total insecurity, and the neighborhood. And I wouldn't be surprised that the president is happy that the applicability or the application in that particular court has brought sanity. It's not, the number of people death we are getting per day due to insecurity in Karamoja was so high among Karamojong themselves and in the neighborhood. I tell you, we once went with the minister Omonyo Jok, and we found in an area where two communities clashed, Bokora and Matheniko, a small place like 3 football pitches. Come on, over 1,000 people had died. And then they started crying that government had given them the gun to finish themselves. We said, no, you stole these guns, you bought them, and we're saying bring it here to the government. So the chaotic Karamoja issue with interclashes, Bokora against Matheniko, Matheniko against Pian against what, all those things, we are losing lives in hundreds daily. Leave alone Karamoja to Teso, Karamoja to Acholi. So if a particular court brought sanity, is that wrong?
Well,
now looking inside 2025, we think that for us as a party is an activity that we have to evaluate ourselves, looking into our manifesto. The last time we looked at it was 84% successful. We are left with the other remaining percentage. So we want to be sure to evaluate it again. And then we are now posed to say drafting a new manifesto. And we have to thrash up our structures. And we are set to go. And we hope that peace will continue as it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Major. So it's time for us to take a break. And when we return, I'd still like us to talk a little more about the status of our political parties, both opposition and the ruling party, and also a little bit about the judiciary and the crisis of the trust deficit that most Ugandans actually now find themselves in the moment the question of the judiciary or access to justice is talked about. We'll be back after the break.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break, and glad to still have you with us here on Citizens Chat Show, streaming to you on Civic Space TV on YouTube. My name is Judith Atim. Once again, we're still continuing with our discussion. Our topic is the projections for 2025, the year of campaigns. And the first round of conversations, we were still looking at the political dynamics that lie ahead of us this year. Before we went to the break, I think I said I'd like us to talk a little more about the strength of political parties, which is something you've all actually touched. Our political parties, especially the opposition, have been heavily fragmented. That's a fact. Whether it's UPC,
and heavily infiltrated.
That's also true. where do we see ourselves this year within the political parties? Do you envisage a situation where political parties will come together and perhaps present a formidable force that can actually upset the NRM, or do you think the parties could actually fragment more, and which could actually potentially work to the advantage of the ruling party?
You see, well, first of all, I've been researching, you know, part of the reasons I've been away. So I was in Nairobi, Tanzania, and then Ghana. I was researching about Tanzania elections, where the ruling party, after 50 plus years in power, got 99.1% in the civic elections. But what was the nature of the elections?
Which country?
Tanzania.
What was the nature of the elections? The elections were held under the office of Prime Minister instead of the Electoral Commission. They disqualified where the minister in charge of elections is an in-law of the president, marries the president's daughter. They disqualified 70% of opposition candidates using flimsy issues. If you write your name as Joseph Ochieno, so they come to Joseph, they add an I. So when you come, they say, you present your ID, they say, this is a different person. This is Joseph Ochieno, and for you are Joseph Ochieno, disqualified. And then the process of appeal, you are also appealing to state agencies and the time of appeal. So they disqualified 70% of opposition candidates. The 30% that stayed in the race were rigged. 3 candidates murdered on voting day. 1 Secretary General of CCM murdered by the Green Guards, the CCM militia. And then you have such an output, of course, of 99%. So when you translate that to Uganda, or let me first take you to Ghana, a beautiful election, which was 56 versus 40 something, you know, not 99 crazy things. So you have Ghana election. I arrived 2 days before voting. You are taken through briefings, stakeholder briefings, and the rest. We were at the Kofi Annan International Conference Center. Next Kofi Annan International Conference Center is a military barracks. I spent 9 days in Ghana. I did not see a military officer of Ghana. A short distance from there is a military training center near where the hotel where I was staying. I did not see. I don't know what uniform they wear. I did not see any army officer in Ghana.
But you saw how the barracks looks like.
Just
fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic,
and
like Bugolobi Flats.
Yes.
That's what
But
I know that barracks.
So the soldiers are nowhere to be seen. You don't interface with them unless there is a crisis that requires their presence. When you compare that situation with ours here, just to add, because we are discussing the weaknesses of political parties, the Ghana elections were called by a political party, opposition political
That's
party,
correct, yes.
after their internal tally center. They woke up, we all woke up at 8:30. We had been observing the counting. The opposition party said, we are through the National Democratic Congress. We have finished our tallying. We have received 96% of our agents' reports, declaration forms, and we are calling the election. This is the tally. 30 minutes after their press conference, which took 1 hour,
That's right.
the ruling candidate, who is a vice president, serving vice president, the president couldn't run, term limits. The vice president called a press conference and said, I agree with the declared results of the opposition party. Our internal tally also shows the same result. And I wish to congratulate the opposition. And I conceded fit. And I'm ready
to work with.
facilitate the transition.
I cited it.
So when you come to our context here, in 2016,
Yeah.
FDC tried to
Tally.
Tally center, yes.
The military overran their tally center in Kamocha. They threatened the landlord. They told the landlord to refund their money and close the office. Or you will disappear. Of course, they might not add what I'm saying. The man who called the FDC shaking and saying, come and take your man, I don't want to see you anywhere here, after the military visit. So, so when I talk
The first time in recent times, money was not particularly liked by a money owner.
on the day of voting, we got information we're observing
Judith Bambi.
I know.
We wish we were there.
I don't want to laugh, but we got information that the Tare Center, which they had put out in Najanangumi, that the chopper, this is alleged already, we didn't confirm. So it was alleged that the chopper was leaving Churuhura with 2 billion cash to give to the people at FDC Tare Center to compromise them and they don't tarry. So we intercepted information. And then maybe this is information that I'm disclosing for the first time.
Yeah,
and we told the people in FDC and said, change the people in your Tare Center. They changed them. Yes. So, but what happened after? Then, by then, the Red Kawesi started arresting all their agents. That's how they raided the Tare Center. After the failure of the chopper, arranged the chopper to deliver man, then the raid happened. And you know the story from there because it came to the media. So if you look at all these issues, when even a radio station, I know KFM was once threatened, that you are announcing results, you are going to switch you off. You don't have power to announce. Here the junta does not allow anybody. We were raided, our data center was raided at Africana in 2021. Because by 30 policemen, they entered when I was in a corner, counting that their worry was, this civil society are going to tell results. Because they know they always use fake results. Then they rounded up all the young people that were in the data center, 28 of them, bundled them in Ichubudi. So, if you compare, that is the major weakness, the context. The second context is infiltration of the party. You can see what's happening in FDC. Here they are quarreling again. FDC is more or less like a dead party, really. It's just a matter of posturing. I hear there is a second rift of quarreling after Katonga. That will be the third. The first was the exit of Ojiambo and
the formation of ANC, yeah.
The exit of Katonga and after Museveni's money, alleged Museveni's money. Now I hear there's more confusion of new money. And then the arrest of Besigye is also linked to that. That Besigye blocked the purchase of FDC, like a band of second-hand clothes. So that is the anger and drama also surrounding Besigye. We tried to kill FDC, you saved it, so now we get you. I wouldn't be surprised later when the army fails to adduce evidence in Besigye's case. I wouldn't be surprised myself. So this is the context of political parties. Then there is no freedom of expression, association. So how do parties market their agenda? They go to meet the people. If citizens alone cannot be allowed to express themselves, how will parties express themselves? The violence we documented in the army. We have a pictorial documentation from nomination to announcement of results every day. We were just collecting pictures from authentic media houses. We don't have any word of our own. If you look at this pictorial documentation, you will be scandalized and you will join Dr. Ojiambo in advocating that we ban election because of military violence.
As a matter of interest, maybe Sarah, if you don't mind, I don't know how, Madam Presenter, what do we do? I know it's maybe the early part of this, but I know we're also in the second half. You know, if you look at the extraordinary Tanzanian, and by the way, your Tanzanian analysis shocks me. I don't know Tanzania as well as Dr. Ojiambo.
He knows
but the extreme, that was a bit of a new one for me, quite honestly, and I thought I knew the region. But then number two, the fantastic element of the Ghana one, which I know, you know, but for our viewers, and particularly those young, fantastic, hopeful viewers, and then the nonsensical mess we've got in our country. Sarah, what do we do?
So when I talked about, as I respond and hope to conclude, When I talked about state capture, I know which said the army does not work like a military wing of NRM. But during elections, the army is annexed to NRM. I want to give an example of Brigadier Sande, which is documented. It was the most documented partisan conduct, openly campaigning, openly threatening opposition, walking house to house and announcing on radio how Museveni must win. Of course, we can look at other crazy examples like the conduct of CDF, but we can leave that obvious thing. So you look at that. Instead, Brigadier Sande was promoted and rewarded with, you got some medal in some of these crazy public functions. Was he ever disciplined for violating the code of conduct of UPDF? No. Then how can you claim that you have not captured state organs if pillars of the state work to give you advantage over your opponents during elections? And this is documented, not in one election, including the evidence before the Supreme Court in presidential petitions. It's a public secret. So what do we do next? No, the citizens have taken back their country. Hasn't Assad left Syria running after 50 years of
He left while you were away, Sarah.
Yes.
You and I have never met since then. Give me 5. These things are possible.
Yes. So the citizens have to reclaim their country.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Dr.
Judith, you
Ojiambo.
know, these things are very depressing. And Sarah has just given 2 fantastic examples. And the good thing I've been in these countries for some time. When you look at Ghana, sometimes you want the ocean to leave so that Ghana joins Europe.
Yes, true.
And that's why in Ghana, everything is European style. They drive on the right. Yeah. So you can't compare Ghana with these banana republics here.
I agree.
These banana republics. You are talking about a military barracks. If they show you a military barracks in Ghana, you think it's a residential posh area in Kororo.
Yeah.
So people who stay in such places cannot behave like this Mama Ingia Pole characters here of Uganda here. You know, an army man, you find him is hungry, he's going to sleep in Mama Ingia Pole. He has not received this salary because most of his salary has been deducted by the other organization called the Wazalendo and what have you. The man is just carrying a gun as a burden. So you can't compare. Tanzania, by the way, you forgot one thing, that after that election, the leader of opposition had to run to the Belgian embassy to survive being killed.
Yes, that was 2020, but also 2015.
No, the most recent.
These civic elections. I was looking at civic elections,
Oh, the
which
one
happened last month.
yes. But for me, I'm telling you the last election.
In 2020.
2020.
Yes.
The leader,
Local, like what we call local government. The grassroots elections.
the leader of the opposition who had contested with the Magufuli. You know, Magufuli was like a hydra. On one hand, he had done good things on development, but politically he just killed that country. He killed that country. Many of the journalists were found floating on Indian Ocean and so on. So Tanzania is terrible. As we talk now, there is no opposition in Tanzania.
Yeah.
But before I forget, and Judith, just permit me before I go to political parties, to tell you that this year, something has happened in this country that has never happened, even when we had crisis. Marking UNEP. Marking UNEP.
Yeah.
2024 December.
Yes, marking UNEP. For the first time, UNEP marker has walked away. I don't know which results UNEP is going to announce to us.
Let the army go and mark.
The teachers moved away because they were telling them funny things that they are going to be paid. For the first time, it has never happened, and that should worry everybody who has a future for this country. But going back to political parties, political parties in Africa generally, and Uganda now being the big brothers, because all people want to learn bad manners come to Uganda. That's why in Kenya now they are accusing Uganda for teaching root of bad manners in Kenya. Where do you think political parties would succeed? Because political parties, as we have been saying, only have 2 things to do. to mobilize supporters and run for elections. Because in Uganda, sometimes these NRM people want to deceive us that political parties should do development. How? They don't have a budget. They don't run the treasury. Their work is to mobilize supporters
So that they take
so
power.
that they go and organize an election and take over power to do what they demand from them. But in Uganda, political parties are told after election they should keep in fact, if you hear that a political party is good, you have to be like one political party which goes in to organize forever. This party which has been saying, I will not mention its name because its supporters may get annoyed with me, that for them they are organizing branches and organizing routes, structures. They don't have an MP, they don't have even a district chairperson, they have nobody. An election ends, they go home, they are organizing structures. Such political parties are very good in Uganda. But if you're a political party like NOP, you come in an election and you sweep a whole region, just remove including the vice president and the many chairperson of NRM, you chase them away from a party, they will hunt you. And you saw how elections ended in 2021. NOP was hunted as if they were rebels in this country.
But can I just interject as a matter of interest? Judith, so just for the record, the vice president of NRA lost an election.
Yes.
He was swept.
Yes.
That was a powerful wave, wasn't it? So the vice president was diselected.
Yes.
Okay, what I said, he was defeated in an election by an emergent political party.
So what we are saying is that political parties in Uganda are there. They are like kids who have suffered from anemia. They cannot walk. They can't, as I normally describe, in Uganda, you are like organizing elections, which is like a swimming contest, where political parties are one of the swimmers. They put on gumboots and helmets. Then the ruling party is in a swimming costume. Then they jump into a swimming pool. They sink. Because if you're putting on gumboots and a helmet and you're in a swimming pool, you just sink where you have landed. Then the other person swims out with the swimming costumes and the fins. Then he says, you see, these political parties are fake. We have told them they cannot manage. But they are running under very difficult conditions. Very difficult conditions. When have you heard, for example, let's assume now the state is as neutral as Major Awich wants us to believe. Have you ever heard that the state, the police have gone and raided plot 10, Chadondo?
NRM.
Hey, have you ever heard?
We are disciplined.
How can you
Have
raid
you
your
ever heard?
How can you raid your own home?
Do you want to imagine?
We are
Do you want to
In
imagine?
terms of what?
Do you want to imagine?
Following the law.
Listen. Do you want to imagine that the people at Chadondo come from a different country? They don't have any problem. They don't disobey police. They don't do anything. But look at FDC. Many times it has been ransacked. Look at NOP offices. Even this new, you find a man, for example, I have a son of 10 years. You find a man like Museveni, who has been here forever, 50 years, and so he has been here. Struggling with the Chagulanyi because he is there. The police is beating up people. Haven't you seen? Look at this UPC now these days because they joined the rally. UPC used to be a place where police would do ransack every time. In fact, my colleague Igenyi, when he was at the university, was killed at the front.
Oh, Igenyi was your friend?
Yes, was a very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Was killed. That's why I don't like police. That's why I don't like Uganda police. I don't like them. So these political parties, why are you blaming them? I don't see them doing anything. In fact, for me in Uganda, I respect anybody who belongs to opposition political party. It is resilience. It is a hard time. But that does not excuse them. I want to argue that does not excuse them. Like, for example, I've not been happy with how they have treated the Besigye issue, the Besigye question. Because you cannot treat these martial court or what I would call juntas, in Besigye's word, in like what Besigye. in peaceful, you go and have press conferences. Press conferences cannot help. In fact, I think that the political parties have not treated the issue of Besigye very well, and that's why he had to spend Christmas in jail. So I think political parties need to do better. They need to operate like snakes. If you touch one of them, you have touched all of them. Snakes, unfortunately, each one is on its own, and that's why we find them and kill them one after the other. So political parties need to protect each other. They need to do what the DP used to do in the fight for return of constitutionalism in Uganda, where they had to go to court, they had to do things. When, for example, they arrest somebody, like I was not happy when they arrested the NUPU supporters. I expected all political parties to muzzle all their lawyers and go to this march in the way they did to Besigye. But for me, Besigye, I think you needed to do some civil disobedience. There's need for some civil disobedience. But I think the way people think that the political parties must come together, for me, I think that that's not necessary, because the supporters of the political parties are already together. They will support them. And you see, like in the 21 election, I was observing, people would go and just ask opposition yani, and that's the one they would take.
Oh, umbrella.
The opposition one. And I think that's what they need to do. Is that this does not mean that I hate NRM, but sometimes with the NRM supporters, what they do in this country, make us, some of us.
Thank you.
Like.
Thank you, Robert. Joseph.
I protested, I think on this program sometimes last year, that I was very disappointed that, Sarah, while you're aware, that I wasn't invited to that big signing ceremony in Parliament.
Because of confusion in UPC, I think.
They did not try hard enough, and you'll not be surprised part of what Dr. Ojiambo says. It's very important. That means we're sufficiently informed, because there've been cases where events have happened, and of course the iPod was obviously, that's the Fudge thing that kind of appears. I've had cases where possibly what a bit was, but quite clearly, I am the elected leader of UPC, and that is in the public domain and it's official. Partly even as a result of defiance, they should really have informed me, because I would have gone, and I really wanted to go, and I wanted to go and participate. But number two, Sarah, even possibly in my absence, nothing stops these guys, for the point Dr. Ojiambo is making, to symbolically find somebody, UPC of repute, in their own rights to be there. And I don't think you necessarily need a seal of somebody associated with the NRA or anything else. Likewise, I also don't know whether the DP person wasn't there. I don't know whether DP was there. But maybe for that, again, as you said, maybe because of this confusion thing. But considering that these are traditional political parties, Judith, I think it was sad. And then I said at the beginning, when I was talking about what my friend in NRM said, that this court-martial thing is for all of us. I think it is true that if I were a leader of UPC, we would be persuading all opposition political parties, and including challenging friends in NRM, including Comrade Awich, to say, who are NRA, okay, what is it? Take a position, and come and join us and be part of that. And number three, as Sarah says about what happens in democracies, actually in reasonable democracies, NRM members of parliament and NRM politicians should be able to break ranks and simply say that on this one of Besigye, I don't agree, we don't agree. And then come and rally, if it's maybe a demonstration, a picket, or in this case, that meeting in Parliament, as part of solidarity and with Kizza Besigye. Remember, you guys, it's really about this country rather than us individuals or political parties. So much more work needs to be done on these. But then when you go into the details of how much we've been broken, yes, in UPC's case, we the person who's occupying the party headquarters is officially not an elected leader. Both Court of Appeal and Supreme Court have ruled on this matter, but it's also true that they're officially working with NRM, so they don't really represent us as a party. So we are under siege from that perspective. The person who stole my elections and declared himself on December 28, 2020, Peter Bireete, is nowhere to be seen. Last year, following the previous year's Ojiambo elections, gave Jimmy and a certain section of his supporters the possibility that, look, what I'd been saying for the last 4 years, that it's possible for us to regroup and reorganize, and that we should say no to NRA. A realization that it's actually possible to do these things. So the last year, Jimmy has been representing himself as the voice of UPC. Now, party members are so desperate, after 40 years, are so desperate that anybody who comes, Dr. Ojiambo, if anybody turns up in Chambog and says they're UPC, most of the people who are UPC-leaning people will not care. They'll just clap and say yes. So that, in part, is what's happening in UPC going around the country. I saw the other day, I think towards Christmas, Jimmy was somewhere in Kabale, and one of the district leaders tried to raise these issues. Quite unusual that leaders are able to raise these things. So that's the mess. So we're in a terribly difficult position, but they're directly linked to the dictatorship. To the extent that in our case, the last elected leaders were Laro Tunu in 2010. And to expect that anything would happen with the last elected leader in 2020, and now we are in 2025, that's 15 years later, you have no leadership, you have no direction. And every particular groups, there are two factions and they're chasing their own agenda, and then there's Ochieno and my offices in my briefcase and my car and my private offices and some of the spaces that I go to. It's not really auguring well that this is where we would be saying that by the end of the year we'll be getting rid of Museveni. It's still my hope that, and I'm still working for that, Sarah, that we able to resolve this matter. But likewise, I hope that other political parties, FDC, as you said earlier, I don't see them recovering quickly to really give any meaningful challenge. NUP, of course, with the breakup of Mpuga and others, and some of the challenges already being presented, some of the opportunities my friends in NUP sort of lost, in the last 4 years, considering the momentum that they actually had. People talk about experience and things like that. I don't agree. Milton Obote took over the leadership of the Uganda National Congress in 1959. And by 1960, he had brought together the broken up section of Uganda National Congress and reconstituted themselves as Uganda People's Congress, pushed for the working together of the various political forces in Uganda, including a very difficult time at the time when we had monarchies and kingdoms. Systems are still very weak, leading us to persuade the British around independence, working with other political parties, the Lancaster House Agreement, whatever you say. But these are relatively young people, not so as experienced at the time, and led us to independence. So I'm not quite sure whether the fact that NUP is necessarily a new party means, therefore, they should not be able to do as much as possible. But some of these things I've argued about ideology. But Sarah, finally, I will just say this. I'm saying Sarah because I'm pointing at her for a particular reason, Judith. I have genuinely argued that in this country, we need less political parties and more leaders. And so the mushrooming of political parties and organizations really doesn't augur well, and I think, in my opinion, plays much more into the hands of Mr. Museveni. And the more leaders we need does not necessarily mean leaders of political parties. Who are these men and women? And that's why I'm looking at you, people like yourselves in civil society, who possibly we shall relate with you from a perspective of being neutral enablers with, of course, all of us have what interests. We need, Judith, leaders, and possibly you guys in the media, who are able to bang tables so that political leaders wake up to the realities, to the mess of what's going on, and so that 2025 simply say that no, the extremes of impunity by NRA cannot be sustained. And let me conclude. Ghana, I was a witness of a witness who did the critical thing, and I've told this program, I think 12 years ago, at an election in which there was an election impasse. The first post-Rawlings, and then for the one after the Rawlings one, where the two opposition political parties were scrambling for who would win. There was an impasse. Security services, national security services, sort of told the story several times, called heads of services, called the leaders of the two contending political parties in a face-to-face meeting and said, Ugandans, watch. The two of you know the incumbent and the incoming one. It was the incoming one who had won the elections. The two of you guys know who won the elections, you know? And you need to go to the room and come back to us and tell us who won the elections. We are not going to decide, and we're not going to side with any of you guys, you know? We shall be on the side of Ghanaian people, but you know. But you guys, you had better save Ghana, better save us. These guys went, and you know what? These guys came back. Since then, it's hardly 15 years. The story is what Sarah is talking about. So my point is, these things are possible. It is possible for us, especially when we know that impunity no more, but also when we know that we're able to break our selfishness and realize that the only country we have is the Republic of Uganda. So these things can happen here. So extraordinary how far Ghana has gone in hardly 10, 12 years. And one of the people who was there told me this personally in London. And I think, Sarah, at that time we were still distant friends. And I think once upon a time, I think I told you this in the telephone conversation. What was I trying to say, Judith? I was trying to give hope to civil society organizations in Uganda. I was giving hope to political activists in this country. I was giving hope to friends like Comrade Awich, who are very decent people, who are genuinely meaning well for this country, except they just locked up because they don't know how, and they don't have the energy and courage to break through a system led by their commanders in chief and the restrictions they have in their political organizations. And finally, to give hope to young Ugandans that no, these things can possibly be done. And that these guys who appear so strong and so powerful, you know, including these generals, you know, they're actually human beings. Can you imagine? I don't know whether it was a conversation during break with one of our friends who's one of those days who's a Kadogo, and then you're a young Kadogo and you're carrying guns for two people. And here's a commander who appears so big and so strong. You see them in the streets of Kampala, and they're in a convoy of 10 vehicles. They must really be cowards. So these people, if they remain as individuals, they're not as strong as you are. But Judith, you know what? What breaks me all is the possibilities and beauties that you go to Botswana last year, and the ruling destiny and the ruling opposition political party, partly because of free and fair elections. And that's why the NRA cowards fear Sarah, you know? The opposition was able to, they call it swings, you know, from what you had to the other. Such a major swing of a big, huge overall majority to literally being wiped up in parliamentary elections. And finally, what is that fantastic beauty in Namibia? I know it is SWAPO. I know Comrade Awich doesn't want to hear these stories. I know he thinks I'm talking too much. But I better talk much more than guns. You know,
finally, to last but not
the
least,
fact that elections takes place in Namibia and we have a woman president in Namibia, I really hope that I will be handing over to a woman who will be the first Ugandan female president in this country. I hope that happens sooner.
Thank you, Joseph. We're actually running. We have 15 minutes to go, so you will be the last to submit, and then we'll conclude. Yes.
I'm giving you my 1 minute, my brother.
In conclusion, in finally, last but not least, you take all the time.
That is proper conversational English.
Just like your chairman normally does. Finally, it does.
It's okay. Major, let's hear from you.
This segment, your question is that
the strength of political parties, and we were looking at the opposition parties and the fragmentation within, and whether they can actually regroup and present a formidable force that can counter the NRM, or if they will be further fragmented that works to the advantage of the ruling party.
I'd like to start from the end, maybe to keep the anxiety of the discussion high, because I have earlier comments that I wanted to comment on, but let me comment from the end so that it raises the anxiety. That to reply to that is that we still think our party chairman was not wrong when he said by 2026 he doesn't want to see any opposition. They'll be finished. It was from his mouth. But it did not mean that he will use draconian laws or beat them, but he meant that he will do good things to the extent that the people themselves will choose not to be with the opposition. That is what he meant. So, briefly to that answer, That is what we are seeing. And it's about to come to fruition. But let me say this. Sarah had commented about the interfering or with opposition counting or activities that Hotel Africana, then Kamucha, and all these places.
Hotel African is civil society.
I don't think I'm better placed to comment on that time, because that needs a fact-by-fact reply. Because whoever was at the theater at that time, I'm sure if he had a chance to speak, he would give a better story. Infiltration really is not our domain of NRM. In other democracies, infiltration or spying for another party inside another one would be a serious problem. And I think that is why we had the Watergate scandal in America, a Watergate scandal, which is very famous. Somebody can Google. A Watergate scandal in America was when another party attempted to spy on another party. For us, we leave other parties do their things. We just concentrate on doing ours so that the people themselves are there to choose. So infiltration is an allegation. We don't do that. On the example of Ghana that we are thanking, I am the one who first said it before Sarah said it. And how did I bring it? I was bringing it because Professor Ojiambo is saying the African democracy is so fake and so bad. I was telling him, no, we are doing well and we are progressing, unless you're using the lenses of Western democracies. And I gave the example. Sarah simply came to explain further of what I had said.
Ghana is applying what type of democracy?
Ghana is applying really mixed breed. An African-born democracy, of course, with a multi-party system, which is that Western. So I gave the example of Ghana, especially in my bid to not push continent to its dark imagined corner. I want to also comment about the import of the army into our civil politics.
Yeah.
The Constitution says that the police may call the military. That is a constitutional provision, that the army can go to support police. So whenever you have seen the police in politics, like guarding polling stations or escorting boxes or curbing civil unrest or whatever it is the work of the police. The police simply calls the army for reinforcement, and that is a constitutional provision. It is there. Somebody can look for the article, but there is an article about that.
Which one, Major? You want to imagine that we are foreigners, we have just come in this country, or what?
I just want you to understand what you see as a layman, that it has a legal basis. That when you see the soldiers guarding a ballot box or at a polling station,
call them.
It is under constitutional provision. Of course, for you, as a professor of some domain of discipline, you'll say, oh, the combat is there. This is military interfering. You don't even know that there's a legal formality that important.
I don't know.
Yes, I'm telling you. Now, you gave the example of Assad in relation to a question posed by my Congress brother here about what do we do as Ugandans. And there was a bit of a dispute about what we should do. I think what we do is clear. What we should do, and for us as NRM, we are alive to the scenario of Assad. We are alive to other scenarios around the world. What we do, for us, what do we do, is that we go back to Article 1 of the Constitution. Power belongs to the people.
With the guns.
And we know that no amount of tanks, no amount of artillery, no amount of airplane can suppress the people. And that is why for us in NRM, we believe in how do we make the livelihoods of the people better so that they can support us. So worry not about what Uganda, what we do. For us, we are alive to the Article 1 of the Constitution. I also want to make comment about the soldiers in Ghana sleeping in a kololo light. Yes, they do. Our soldiers are in Mama Ngia.
Although the
we
commanders,
see
although the
them
commanders
as
in very good
heroes.
places.
Our soldiers are heroes. They live under hard situations, but they struggle, and they are one of the most disciplined soldiers on the continent. Talk about civil relationship, and partly because we, right from the beginning in NRA, took a philosophical stand of protecting military-civil relationship by firing squad, and our civil democracy from the West were saying that is draconian, but it served the purpose. We honestly believed that a soldier should respect a civilian. I remember even women-men relationship. There was a philosophy in NRA that that girl you are seeing is either a daughter of somebody or a wife of somebody. Don't. And soldiers who did their attempt, they were put on firing squad. So our soldiers are sleeping badly, but they are disciplined, they are paid badly, but we are happy. They have done much more, even in the continental domain, than those sleeping in the warfares. And we have provided peace across the continent. So our soldiers are heroes, despite our challenges. But we hope that soon we shall also make better logistics for them. There's a comment I want to make about the defeat of the vice president. And the congressman was very excited about it. You mean the vice president was defeated?
I was just emphatic.
A vice president was defeated.
I was emphatic.
Yes, the vice president was defeated. And what does that show? Democracy. Amazingly, when a vice president is defeated, there's democracy. When a vice president wins, there's no democracy. If there was this rigging, for goodness sake, why wouldn't we rig for our vice president?
Which is such a
Why
fantastic
would
lawyer.
a big area win and we lose our vice president and you don't say democracy? Yes, our vice president lost. And that's democracy. And that's what we keep saying. If, for goodness sake, we are rigging, why did we rig for our vice president? So your excitement about the loss of a vice president is there. He lost. We lost the vice president. It would appear humiliating to a ruling party, but that is democracy. But that should also demonstrate that we lose election genuinely and we win election genuinely. It's not that when we win, there's no democracy. And when you win, there's democracy. When our vice president loses, there's excitement. Come on, why are we double standard? Does NRM respect police? We do. Like during Corona, COVID campaign, we agreed that we're not going to have mass rally. We must sit everywhere President Museveni went. We were in a tent or in a hall. We do. Even the activities I told you we do recently that I was saying, we developed what we call baraza. Baraza is simply a Swahili word meaning sit down and talk to people, not a rally. So we respect the police, and that's why they don't come to plot 10, not because we are the ruling party. How political parties were picked for Sheraton, you are wondering why you are left out. I think the idea is that it is now a norm that the political parties recognized by Electoral Commission are the ones who are dealt with at institutional framework. So Electoral Commission is supposed to know which political parties are there, and they know their address, and it is, if anybody wanted, if somebody came from planet Mars or planet Jupiter now, and wanted political parties and their contact, they go to Electoral Commission. So that is why you are left out, because Electoral Commission knows some particular political leaders in UPC. And according to them, they don't know you. And that's why you are not invited.
That's too harsh.
It is,
No,
and not only that,
it is.
but
It
it's
is
just,
Election
but it's just a
Commission.
confirmation.
The Election
It's a
Commission are
confirmation
the host.
that
The Election Commission are the host. And that is why even the party, the money that is given to Parliament, the ministry that disperses that party, money, is Election Commission. There's a money given and it's shared.
I feel it is harsh because I think they were not depending on political parties registered at the Electoral Commission.
They
were
their
dealing
26.
with the political parties they can work with.
No. They invited 26 political parties. 26 political parties were invited. I signed and made a speech on behalf of NRM. I was there.
No, you were not.
No. I was talking.
You don't know what you are talking
I was
about.
talking about the invitation in Parliament recently over Kizza Besigye. And really, the political parties represented there know the truth.
talked of
Opposition.
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 No, I was talking about
talked of
opposition.
Sheraton.
But even then,
No, I had
even
Sheraton.
then, if it were Sheraton,
Sheraton.
what Comrade Rich is saying, and is a
Talked
lawyer,
of Sheraton.
is a confirmation that the Electoral Commission, this NRA Electoral Commission, is actually an organ of Mr. Museveni and his political organization. Because this NRA Electoral Commission ought to know that Jim Akena is not a UPC leader. This NRA Electoral Commission ought to know that the Court of Appeal ruled that Jim Akena is not leader. And this NRA Electoral Commission must know that the Supreme Court too ruled against Jim Akena.
You are losing the point.
Yeah.
The issue we were arguing
I know.
about was the issue of comradeship with Kiza versus
That's my point. But just to put a disclaimer there, but just a quick one, and in 30 seconds. There is something extraordinary about this thing about the discipline of NRA. I think, Comrade Awich, with respect, NRA is not as bad as many other armies. But I think average Ugandans from Kasese, average Ugandans from Mukuru and Teso, most Ugandans from Acholi, most Ugandans from Teso,
Gentlemen,
most
we need to
Ugandans
wind
and
up.
most Africans, including in Congo, will take extraordinary exception that we are talking about this as a disciplined organization, an organization that actually effectively goes and does what it does down there. So no, I think with this exceptional right to reply, no, this NRA thing, what it has done to this country, some of the things on record that NRA has done. Honestly, even Idi Amin's government regime did not do some of the things that NRA did. So we can't let that get away with.
Can we just allow him to finish? And
the point here that the congressman came in was contrary to what you're saying, that an activity was in Sheraton for signing a peace plaque, which with all political parties signed peace plaque. There was a plaque put on the wall for each and every political party to sign. And there were 26 political parties. And he is wondering how he did not go.
No, it was not that. Anyway.
It's not the parliament. That is what I got. So I was saying the invitation, if somebody came from planet Jupiter, is election commission, it's not about NRA. Now, breaking ranks also, my last comment more or less, breaking ranks, that there was also a call that for in the interest of the country and going above political parties, we must at times break ranks and come around a common goal.
Yes.
We are alive to this. We are alive to this as NRM. For example, when somebody hatched a plan to elect a leader of opposition, it came with a private member's motion. Everybody thought it was a machinations from NRM. We went and we sided with the political parties. With NUP, I went with the Secretary General of NRM, and we appeared before the Committee on Legal and Parliamentary. We found when NUP had just appeared, and every opposition member in Parliament had prepared arsenal to fight us. They thought we were the one behind this. We said no. For the sake of democracy, let the second running party be the leader of opposition. To the shock of everybody, do we still need to demonstrate more than that? That when there's an objective approach to a matter, we come together. We do that. Therefore, for political parties, 2025, I see them in problems. Our party leader had already seen that by a given time, they will not be there. And how are we doing it? We are improving the livelihoods of Ugandans, making sure through intervention, PDM and others, money is in their pocket, they are happier. Then they will know the right party is NRM.
And I would also like you to conclude, and then we move this side.
My conclusion is 2024 has been quite eventful, with many good and bad, but thanks God, as a country, we are still one. Many countries, I keep saying, have broken. Somalia, Sudan, Libya, Yugoslavia, and others. So 2024 is still one of the many years that we have run a budget. We got into another one. We are a country in one piece. Though, as a family, we have challenges. You will never get a family without challenge. There will always be things that we need to do better. And that is the basis of this discussion. So we shall always keep looking forward that we'll do better. So I request that the Ugandans, we put ourselves together in 2025, we move forward. Of course, as I repeat, as a family, we shall always have disagreement. But Uganda is above all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph?
I hope this year Nagonga Road is tarmacked, because leading to Christmas. Once upon a time, Ngongoro was an island because we were surrounded by routes for which none of us could return home, thanks to the bad roads. But I also hope that this year, politically, we can do better because amidst all this, actually, Sarah and co, whenever I go around the country, actually, Ugandans, when you talk to them, they wake up. Ugandans have been in limbo for rather too long. And so part of my trips around the country, when you talk to most Ugandans, they just want leadership, they want direction, they want information. So it's still possible for political parties to mobilize and organize and to get a critical mass that is able to make a possibility that we're able to have the kind of change that we had in particular in Botswana, in this country. So I hope that does happen, but of course that will not happen unless and until we're able to establish clear leadership in the respective political parties and clear leadership across the country. But that I hope also that NRA leaders hope to wake up and demilitarize politics and allow political parties and the Ugandan citizens to freely express their views and opinions, and that perhaps in the likely event that Mr. Museveni and his team loses, that they're able to return home, and then we guarantee their continuation as a future, and that a new dispensation emerge, a political dispensation. And I really, really hope that we're able to build momentum towards that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ojiambo.
Yeah, this year, as I said last year, we are going to have some financial difficulty. Remember, last year we came up with the fictitious budget, which I have seen in the budget calls. They have tried to reduce to go back to normalcy, but it still looks like the country is so much indebted, and the revenue collection has not been very good. So next year will be a very hard, this year will be a very hard year for Ugandans, but Ugandans are resilient. They will manage through. Number two, with all these problems in Nup and other places, I still see Nup winning its strongholds. In fact, all those groups that are against Bobi Wine will be wiped out. This one you see from the talks of the people in these areas, they will be wiped out. And I think still the urban areas of Uganda will still be under opposition in 2026. Most of the urban areas, the Jinja, the what, will still be under opposition. But so long as Yoweri Museveni is still a candidate on the ballot paper, we shall not have free and fair election because there is some problem between Museveni, NRA, and the Electoral Commission. We shall not have one. But lastly, I just hope that the country understands its diplomatic relations. Uganda is a very good country. Ugandans are liked wherever we go. But because of this military involvement in many things in Kenya now, Ugandans are looked at as people who are going to coach bad manners there, and so on. In Somalia, I've never been in Somalia. You need to go under a guard, to be guarded to go to Somalia. South Sudan is still very hostile to Ugandans. I don't know why, even after helping them. But I hope that that changes. And finally, I really feel that some reform is done in the education sector of Uganda. If things move the way they are, that is the last place you would want a crisis. We want that place stable because the children can be poor, they can have nothing. I don't believe in these PDMs and what have you. The only equalizer in this country is people getting good education.
Thank you, Dr. Ojiambo. Dr. Sarah Bireete, your concluding remarks.
Well, Uganda's majority population are young people, and more than 10 million voters on the voters' roll will be young people, the youth. The youth can single-handedly determine the next president of Uganda. I know that our elections are not free and nor are they fair, but if we had bigger turn-up of young people, and with their energy, education, and the tech survey skills, they try to protect the vote, the young people can turn around events in this country and cause change. I want to refer briefly again to the success story of Ghana. And Ghana's political history. They had a fair share of military generals also, taking power in the first years of independence, and the 2 coups against Kwame Nkrumah, the founding father, the 4 generals that came in, then Jerry Rawlings, at 27 years captures power. And when he captured power, the unfortunate thing was that these generals who had the masterminded coups were then killed. I don't know whether by who in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission after Jerry's government, it wasn't clear. But it's alleged that they wanted to get rid of that culture of the army in the military.
If we would do that here.
So after that, then General Rawlings thought they had cleared the political path. He handed over power to a civilian leader, but warned the civilian leader that he was watching. And he went about his business. He didn't go in the army, but he was very popular and a charismatic character, also difficult to manage. So the leader who came in felt inferior and made so many mistakes that caused the second coup of General Rawlings. The first coup was 1979, the second coup was 1982. So Jerry Rawlings then rules for 10 years, a one-party state, and restores multi-party politics in 1992, where term limits came in and he ruled for another 10 years and handed over power. So a rebirth of democracy that we celebrate in Ghana is because Jerry Rawlings did not betray the cause of the Constitution, the cause of multipartyism, the cause of democracy, and he allowed Ghana to flourish and move on. And Ghana has never walked back. Each party comes to power 4 years or 8 years, you are out. Another one comes to power. Now peaceful handover of power for them is like daily bread. When Uganda here, we lost the turn. When our history and background is, whereas our history and background is similar to Ghana's, up to the stage of the Constitution, we lost the turn on term limits and took a wrong turn, and we are now headed for the cliff fall in terms of democracy decline, and I don't know when we can restore the country back on the right democratic path, but I have faith in the young people, like I began.
Thank you very much. And this brings us to the end of our discussion today, which has been pretty much about the projections for the year 2025, which is largely a year of campaigns. My name is Judith Atim. Thank you very much to each one of you. And see you next week, same time. Bye for now.